You know where you are!
This is Appetite for Distortion.
Welcome to the podcast, Appetite for Distortion, episode number 404. My name is Brando. With me sometimes is Baby Brownstone, Harrison Rex. I am nursing him right now. I mean, if you're listening on podcast, I'm not breastfeeding him. I'm holding him in a baby Bjorn with a bottle in his mouth while my wife gets ready to go back to work. So...
Well deserved as well, Brando, may I ask?
Yes, and G Hall, who is my guest today, as we're doing a fan review. And before I forget, I get to thank you because you gave us a baby gift, which is I mean, you'll explain it better, but it's like very authentic Scottish kilt-looking blanket.
Yeah,
in the vein of, I don't know if it had like an official name other than, I don't know.
I think it was just a generic tartan, really.
Tartan, that's it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I will admit that it's primarily being used to prevent the cats from getting hair all over one of our chairs. So, I mean, it's being put to good use regardless.
Good. Well, I'm glad.
Well, I'm glad that you're here because we don't know how Baby Brownstone's going to react. I may have to pause because nobody wants to hear a screaming baby. It's one thing out in public, but if you're listening on headphones, especially, no one wants that. I'll call my wife over and we're going to review, because Baby Brownstone was watching with me, the Glastonbury Festival that I was able to watch on Twitch here in the States. And for you, was it on the BBC channel?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
very
cool. It's I had a feeling the BBC did a pretty decent job of streaming this. I mean, there was the vocal, I would say, a technical issue with the microphone, not necessarily Axel.
Right.
And there was at one stage during, and before I get into this, Brando, thanks for having me on again. It's lovely to be here again.
Oh, good. I know we're getting right into it because G and we talk all the time. And if you're not familiar, if you know did you just burp? Was that your first burp? On-air burp? Yay, hooray. You're just like Howard Stern. G is the creator of our logo. We had a logo that we paid somebody for, Scotto and I, and you found my podcast just like thousands of other people from other countries. You're in Scotland and you're a graphic designer and you're like, hey, I made this for you. And it blew me away. I'm like, that's my new logo. And I've kept it ever since. And if you're watching this on Zoom, the brand new video intro, even the old video intro, but you made a fresh, brand new one that is made by you. So I'm just always thanking you. And if people haven't seen it already, because G was a guest, I forget the episode number. Do you remember? I was going to look it up before, but I forgot.
203, I think it is. Probably the best one you've ever done.
Oh, okay. Because G talks about the Izzy Stradlin documentary that he made by himself, complete DIY. And it's just, it blew me away. I think that's how I initially reached out to you, because I'm always looking on social media for just fans that are doing cool Guns N' Roses stuff. And you just never know when with a fan DIY product or a fan film, it could look super amateur and you can, hey, A for effort, good for you.
Yeah.
But yours was just fascinating. As when I sent it to Alan Niven and quoted, is that pretty darn good for scavenging or something like that. You're just using old Izzy interviews and pictures and you just put it together. It's over 2 hours worth, and it's well over, like, is it 200,000 views? Is it up to more than that, or where are we?
It just broke 350,000 views at the start of the week, and it was
awesome.
the three-year anniversary on Tuesday, which was when we went to see Guns N' Roses in Glasgow. which just decent.
Awesome.
But yeah, the documentary really came around just to stave off boredom of lockdown. So it was a nice thing to, like, you know, take your mind off something bad that was happening in the world.
Yeah.
It took 12 weeks to make and turned out all right. I'm pretty happy with it.
It turned out great. I mean, just look at the comments on it. And if you haven't watched it yet, please do so on the iWis Life, iWis Documentaries YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And before I forget, speaking of documentaries, I think it was like an episode or two ago, Vicky Hamilton, she was talking about the I Want to Rock, the 80s metal Sunset Strip documentary on Paramount Plus, but nothing was announced yet. Well, it's officially announced where, you know, other than Vicky, there are members of like Skid Row and Winger and Twisted Sister, Vixen. It's going to be the 80s metal dream documentary.
Nice.
This is, but the AFD podcast is a documentary of, it's almost like a living, breathing documentary of Guns N' Roses since the reunion, what's going on. So I'm glad I get to talk with you all about it, because a lot has happened with set list changes, and it's interesting. You know, GNR fans are excited. They just the second time they sound checked, perhaps that's what's going on. God, I've said this before. God bless those fans that are just outside the arena, wherever they're playing, the stadium, and just recording.
Yeah, man.
I know it's like you shouldn't do it, but you're fans. It's okay.
They're doing us a service. They're doing us a solid, man.
They especially
the other day, because I did actually see a video that they sound checked perhaps again.
Yeah.
Now it was pissing down with rain, for, pretty much all day until we got to the venue. So God bless them, my friend. They're doing God's work.
They are. They're making us even more excited, because I'm excited to go to New Jersey to see them again in August with the set list changes and perhaps another new song. But I want to start out with, specifically, we're going to talk about the Glastonbury Festival and the show that you went to, because Glastonbury happened first. Yeah. And I was up in Chicago last week. It was some really good time to kill. I didn't know. I'm like, here in America, we don't get BBC like that. But God bless those fans that either VPN it or streaming it. So there was this pretty solid Twitch link going around that I was able to watch it. And he was on my lap. And it was pretty funny that it seemed like he was watching it. I was holding him like he was facing it. And we're swaying during Patience. We're freaking out during like Night Train. And he seems to be enjoying it. So maybe his first word will be Axel. We'll see what happens. But the show itself, I really enjoyed it watching it.
Same.
But I think it's more of the aftermath that we're going to talk about the Glastonbury Festival, because it's a festival, duh. And I say that specifically because it's not a Guns N' Roses show where there are it's all fans there. There's all types to see: the Arctic Monkeys, Lizzo. There's all kinds of acts performing. It's not just Guns N' Roses who closed the show, despite what Noel Gallagher wanted. Which, by the way, can I ask something? Because Oasis and the Gallaghers, I imagine they're just more famous overseas. They're more famous in the UK than Oasis was huge. But to me, American, they had one good album, they had a few good songs, and that's it. I know they continued to both make music, but they're just not big here. You know, that's what made the Beatles comments so laughable back in the day. Like, are they still huge? Like, are they looked at as, how are they looked at by you, at least? How do you look at Gallagher brothers?
Personally, I am an Oasis fan. It's some sort of drama that has just trundled on since the 90s between the pair of them. I mean, there's great stories of where one of them's hitting the other one over the head with a cricket bat in the studio for whatever reason. You know, they were always in the headlines, and it was always for really ridiculous things. They've always been outspoken, which is a great trait, you know. not afraid to really say what's on their mind. I hear more about Liam through Twitter. He's always tweeting something, and it's usually mundane. But Noel has his band, the High Flying
Birds.
Birds, I think it is, yeah. So they seem to do well within Europe. I'm not too sure how big they are
And
in
they
the
tour
Americas.
here. They do tour here. I mean,
Right.
I'm being a little bit of exaggeration that they have. I know it's like when people say Guns N' Roses, they had one album. They didn't have one album. I know Oasis didn't, and I know they both have successful careers afterwards. But it's just, why are you taking a shot at Guns N' Roses? It's. But I
I'm
guess
not
that's
too
what they
sure.
do. And I don't know if the mic picked that up. He farted on me, so that's part of the entertainment of having a baby as a co-host. Hopefully, it was just a fart and not more. We'll see. That's what he thinks of Noel Gallagher.
But they still catch the same flack from the media as well. So I don't know. It doesn't seem like Noel Gallagher was gaining anything from it apart from just speaking his mind about it for whatever opinion he had.
And that's what it is, I guess. We'll segue into is like the press and what there is to gain. And you'll talk to me more about like what has been labeled like, this is how the UK press is. This is how it is over there.
Yeah.
Press anywhere can suck depending upon the outlet. That's why I take so much pride in not misleading people. And I don't know, I'm going back, and by no means am I Walter Cronkite, certainly. But I mean, I got my degree in broadcast journalism. I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to go into sports journalism at some point, but just the radio bug took over. But I was so turned off early on by seeing how stories can be manipulated.
Sure.
And so easily, just the most dumb stories and how a bias can bleed into it. Just news stories. And now I always looked at it, news is the news. There is no, you have an opinion piece, but then you have the news. And that's why I went to sports at the time, because you can put an opinion, you can put a little flavor in there.
Yeah.
But that's what the quote unquote news is now. It's just all opinion, and that's what's scary. Like, you don't know what's real. But this is we're not talking about. We're not going to go into politics and things like that of that nature. But it's obviously people are like, yeah, well, I'm glad that Guns N' Roses they had a little get in the ring moment, because there's the two headlines.
Sure.
Because you never know. I don't know about you, and I'm very honest. I try to be honest as a Guns N' Roses fan who hosts a podcast, but at the same time, be diplomatic. I'm not going to go all in on like Axl. He doesn't sound like this is the User Illusion tour. This isn't the 80s. This isn't the 90s. His style of singing for 61 years old, I think he does great.
Yeah, same. And that's an honest opinion as well, especially after the other night.
And there are people who I think they just want to put you in a corner for you to say, yeah, he doesn't sound good. They want a sound bite or something to say, hey, you agree with me that he sounds bad. No, he doesn't sound bad. He sounds like he's a 61-year-old Axl Rose. And you know what? Slash, he plays guitar, obviously. He sounds like he's, 62. He sounds like an older guy playing guitar. It's not as fast as it used to be.
Yep.
But I would pay that every single time rather than like an AI that got it right, or a cover band that sounds like they did in the 90s, because those are the guys. That's who I want to see. It's all about the atmosphere. And I think too many people are judging not just Guns N' Roses, but a lot of these acts like they're all Simon Cowell. Like they all have to hit every note. And I'll give you another tidbit. I know you listened to the last episode where I'm going to start to put in little tidbits of Doug's never to be released book. Because I make a lot of comparisons between musicians and athletes, right? Because they're like your stars growing up. That's who you want to be. And an athlete, Father Time takes over. You can't perform anymore. The team needs to win. You just don't have a job anymore. It's different, obviously, with the band. You don't need to win anything. You're out there just performing. But if you're older, you have to change. Like if you're a speed pitcher, you have to change how you are when you get older. You could still be effective. Things are a little bit different. That's how I kind of look at like what Axl has to do. He has to approach things differently, and that doesn't make him worse. That just makes him a human being. That's just what it is.
Yeah.
So when you go on sites that are not mine, If you go on just generic fan rock sites and there's a Guns N' Roses show, I'm always very curious because I don't want to be in an echo chamber. Oh, Axl sounds great and all the time. Love Guns N' Roses. They can do no wrong. I don't want to be in an echo chamber. So I look at specifically other websites and what fans are saying who may not or aren't up to date on Guns N' Roses. Of course, you roll your eyes at people who hate on Axl with an E, whether it's before the L or after the L. Axl sucks. I'm in such a habit of just commenting Axl with the AXL with an asterisk, just spell checking. I have become the phrase the grammar Nazi with Axl. It's just enough already. He's been famous for how long? It's 3 letters. Fucking spell it right. Just spell it right. If you're going to insult him, especially, spell it right. The late jokes, it's enough already. Like, it's just enough already. I feel like it's like Jay Leno or some like old timey talk show host. Hey, did you hear about this? Like, Guns N' Roses were late again. They haven't been late since the reunion. It's over. It's done with. So that was one of the headlines I saw. Like, I think it was on NME magazine. And a lot of, one of the bylines is like, wow, fans reacting to Guns N' Roses. Wow, they're on time. It's true.
Yeah, man.
They've been on time for nearly a decade. Where have you been?
I just read a review in the Scotsman, who I used to work for back in the day, of the Glasgow Review, and the journalist Fiona, her name escapes me right now, but it was also mentioned. Oh, they were on time. They came on about 15 minutes before they were actually scheduled to come on. So, you just have to wonder, are these critics stuck in a certain period of time? Just how up to date are these critics? Because they're Mark Beaumont and Neil, what's his name? I forget his name for the Telegraph.
It is Neil McCormick.
Neil McCormick. Well, they're pushing on in life as well. They're still fighting to be hip and with it. And these guys are working for these publications who do have a philosophy, and you have to go behind that philosophy or you find yourself out of a job. Right. Especially when they're at their age. So I find it laughable. I quite enjoy reading snobby critics getting their knickers on in a twist. And
I know. But I look at it as, again, at my level, whatever you want to call me, low on the totem pole of journalism, I still feel like it's your responsibility to tell the truth and to do the research. Like, I know I fuck things up all the time, but it's to no fault. I missed something. It wasn't on purpose. I don't have an agenda. If I forgot like a date of this happened, or I mispronounced a word, that's not a podcast. But if I'm writing something, when I was writing Doug's book, we got to do the research, because you are educating the reader. It's one thing for a listener, a casual Guns N' Roses fan, or somebody who just knows Guns N' Roses, is not a fan, to make a late joke, to make an Axl joke on his appearance, which is just a whole other thing. I've had enough of these appearance, whether even in Vince Neil, it's like enough already. Like, people age, people go through shit. Like, it's just enough already. Or just keep it to yourself. If you look at Madonna, I'm going to keep it to myself. Hopefully she's not hurting herself. Hopefully she's like, okay. There was a story that came out that she had some sort of health scare, and there are people, who react at that. That's sick, man. That's sick. And before I lose it, the thought, what I was alluding to before, the things I'll say from Doug Goldstein's never to be released book, is that Axl, the whole late thing, which I think is just so misguided out in the public as like a diva issue. We did a deep dive. It's a mental health issue a lot of the time. And he's told me specifically, like with the Rolling Stones, when they opened up those shows for the Stones, like those 4 dates with Living Color, is that, and Doug was telling him for like a week, calm down, look at the stage. It's different. It's not like anything you've seen before. And Axel's like, I don't want to see it because I know if I see it, I'm going to obsess about it. I'm not going to be able to sleep. I just want to go out there and do it.
Yeah.
And I think it was the first show, the second show, like he fell into the pit, while they're doing something. And Doug's like, well, see, I told you to come down. But Axel's so obsessed in his mind about issues and just so, I don't know, as somebody who has mental health problems, I know there's a responsibility. I get that, to be on stage. Fans are paying.
Yeah.
But I don't know. In today's world where people are taking time off, actors and musicians, for mental health, we should look at Axl Rose completely differently, I think, now than we did back then.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. These writers, the mental gymnastics that they go through to write, to bloviate about something and to toe the party line, so to speak. They're quite happy to defend someone else for some ailment, but then they're quite happy to ridicule Axel in
Yes.
an article. There's a disconnect here, and it's not necessarily, look, everyone should expect criticism if you are a performing artist, and it doesn't matter if it's music, sport, everyone's going to catch it at some point. You cannot expect yourself to be 100% in the minds of everyone. You are great. It's just never going to happen. It's
Right.
unrealistic. However, there's a harshness to what I've been reading, especially since Glastonbury.
Right.
It's kind of unwarranted. It's almost as if they're trying to be edgy. They're trying to be young again, ironically.
You're right. That's the difference, is you can be fair, you can be honest. I don't want people to pretend, if it wasn't for you, you can say it's not for you. That's fine, but to go out of your way, so there were two specific reviews that went kind of viral, like Guns N' Roses, the Twitter account called out on Twitter, which was interesting because they used a line from Chinese Democracy, even though it was a very get in the ring situation. Let me see. I have so many things in my Twitter timeline. I post too much, or not enough. It would take a lot more hate than you. And it's at Neil McCormick and at Mark Beaumont, UK. So Mark Beaumont, he wrote just a total clickbaity headline, just a reactionary headline, I should say, because it's not misleading. It's just purposely written to anger people.
Yeah.
This is to the Independent UK. Guns N' Roses review, Glastonbury 2023, front runners for the worst Glasgow headline set of all time. Axl Rose flips between a lower register that resembles like clogged lawnmower and a higher one that sounds like Barry Gibb suffering the mother of all wedgies. Right there, you're not a professional. You're not a professional. Like, you could say you don't like it. He doesn't sound the same. Like it's off. But again, you got to take in all those things I mentioned before. 61 years old. You're seeing Axl and Slash on stage. You're not taking whenever the BBC that feed cut to the crowd, everyone was singing along and having a great time. Like, so it's just not reading the room. So that was probably one of the worst headlines that I've seen.
Yeah, also in that article as well, he's going on about it's a bunch of 59-year-olds kicking around there.
That's not accurate.
Now, I saw quite a few kids on top of their dad's shoulders, and there was one kid especially absolutely belting out the chorus to "Welcome to the Jungle." He knew the lyrics. Now, I'm not pointing to this as an example. We're not all 59-year-olds, but by the same token, this guy cannot just generalize this at the same time. And I'll tell you another thing is as well. It is lazy, and I think it was Neil's article where he was. In fact, no, it was on Twitter. It was a response because poor little Neil, he couldn't handle a bit bit of banter coming back at him, where he was going on about he was in the slowly dwindling crowd. Were you?
Oh yeah,
Listen,
so I can read you the tweet, and I responded to it, and he didn't respond to me, but I retweeted it on my page, and people had some good reactions to it. GNR fans going off like offended teeny boppers because someone doesn't love their heroes as much as they do. Boo-hoo. This is every critic's Twitter timeline after they give a K-pop boy band a bad review. It's 3 stars for fuck's sake. And yeah, I was in the parentheses slowly shrinking crowd. Were you? Look,
yeah,
you're adding fuel to the fire of trying to compare. You're calling 59-year-olds teeny boppers at this point. So they're both. Where are you? Are we teeny boppers or are we old men? Which one are we? And again, it's not the fact that you don't like it. I've had people on this podcast that don't like Guns N' Roses. Art from Everclear doesn't like Axl's voice. And I'm like, that's fine. These people aren't. I know they're heroes to some, and there are people who could look up to, especially Duff McKagan, what he's done with his life, look up to. But I mean, they're not like, they're my favorite band. They're not like heroes. So I mean, I think it's also it's casting another generalization where they are. Oh, it's just a bunch of Axl sycophants. Like you'll get those, but
of course.
again, I think you go in these comments like Guns N' Roses fans, we're intelligent, and they don't know how to respond to intelligence because it's a God, God forbid you write an article and you don't yourself. It's like they're getting the same thing. They're getting reviewed on their review, and they can't take it.
They can't take it. They're joyless pricks. That's why. See, I'll never understand a critic. You have to be a certain type of person that you can go to something and come away from it. So the footage that I've got is mainly of the crowd that I'll be showing later on. And it's to show how much, we're there for a specific reason. We're there to enjoy ourselves. We're there to let loose. Some of us have had this band in our lives for the past 30 odd years. And we're there enjoying ourselves. We do not give a flying fuck what someone down in Cambridge is hammering away on their fucking keyboard, Brando. It means nothing.
They're like the 2 old men in the Muppets. And let me correct myself that their front runners headline is from Mark Beaumont, and the Neil McCormick one. And this is again, it's not just a poor review. It's taking shots, and that's the issue that we have. So Neil wrote, and this is from the Telegraph UK, which is a complete rag. Guns N' Roses review, Pyramid Stage, Glastonbury 2023. Welcome to the mumble. Axl Rose, who now resembles an aging small town hairdresser, has lost his vocal power, but Slash is still a star. So you're commenting on his looks, Neil. You look at his. I mean, he's not a good looking man. He's just he's an old white dude. And again, I find it funny, and it's one of those things I notice. The people who comment on Axl's looks are all men.
Yeah,
Not the women. Axl can get any woman he still wants. Who's laughing? Like I don't know if I've ever said it, like that fat Axl picture that is on the internet. That's photoshopped. Like that, people need to understand that when he's kind of like hunched over when he had that porn stash, that era. That's like a version of a picture that's like stretched out. So if he's really fat, why are you editing it? Like he wasn't 20-year-old skinny popsicle stick Axl. He's not that anymore. Who is in their 60s compared to their 20s? But he's not fat, like at all. So those jokes also need to die. Like they need to die. And again, it's more of like a mental health thing we could talk about. Like you don't need it. Like you don't need it. If you're not in high school, you don't need to talk this way.
Yeah, I mean, again, who are they trying to convince of whatever it is they're writing about? It's ludicrous.
Themselves?
Yeah. I mean, there's a hell of a lot of projection that goes on in the critic world, Envy as well is a terrible thing. Never allow yourself to be envious of any other person, because it will drag you down. You'll probably turn
True.
into a critic.
I know. And I believe
Um,
it was pointed out to me that Neil wrote a book about living in Bono's shadow. Like he was a failed musician.
right.
And he
I
also,
didn't know that.
so that was an interesting point, being like, look at this guy's perception. This is somebody who never lived his dream, and he's putting down other people.
Well,
And it's,
there you
and
go.
interestingly enough, I saw this, I follow Richard Fortis on Twitter, and it's how social media is. Everyone sees your comment, even though it's not to you. He responded to a fan saying to ignore those reviews, those poor reviews. We had a great time. Richard wrote, thanks. It was clear to us that the Independent wrote the review without seeing the show. They said we played over 3 hours. We played under 2.5. They say we played songs that we didn't play. Oh, there were the headlines about, oh, Guns N' Roses, they decided not to play their most offensive song. 1 in a million? They haven't played it since 1988. Way to make something out of nothing. That the audience left, etc. They wanted clickbait. Rolling Stone, The Guardian, Mojo, etc. They all gave positive reviews. I know the Glastonbury typically doesn't like rock bands, but we had a great time. That's just somewhat of that's just some of what the British press does. It's nothing new. So I guess that's good that they understand it. But I don't know. I'm on a soapbox shouting to who now? But this is what it is. It's clicks. It's something I try to prevent from my interviews. I don't set people up, but I can't control what's out there. And I always give the full context on these podcasts, on my social media. I would be more successful if I was all about clicks.
Yeah.
I never would want to be that kind of journalist or professional.
A lot of these rags, and believe me, there's quite a lot over here now. The UK media's got a reputation of hounding people, and it isn't exclusively to music bands, musicians, or anything like that. It also happens in sports. And an example, you might not have heard of him, but his name is Wayne Rooney. He was a famous footballer over here, English player. So he came from the streets. And this is another point. These rags and papers, they like to punch down. They will never punch up. And if they do decide to punch up, it's on behalf of another political party, right?
Yeah.
Or an agenda to push. But Wayne Rooney, he was praised to begin with. He bounced onto the scene at age 16 for a Liverpool club called Everton. And then it was only when he got his big money move to Manchester United, that's when the tabloids turned on him. They were involved in his life all the damn time. And there was never a good word to say about him. And he was compared to Shrek. There would be a picture of Wayne Rooney and then a picture of Shrek, like side by side. And all this guy did was play football. I mean, whatever he did in his personal life, everyone has a right at some point to privacy, surely. But, there was paparazzis hanging outside his bedroom windows, and, it was insane what that guy had to go through.
It is. It's one thing if you're a public figure and you're maybe like the Gallaghers and you're out there giving your opinion all the time and other people giving it back to you. It's the back and forth kind of thing. But if you're just playing a sport, you're just a musician. Like maybe Axel back in the day when he was doing rants was asking for it. If you want to do that, like he's asking for it, which I don't believe. But if you want to look at it that way, sure. He doesn't do anything now. So those are people maybe who still have an agenda, who haven't gotten over, Axel Guns N' Roses coming on 3 hours late for a show that you were in in 1991. You haven't gotten over it yet. But then again, you shouldn't be a journalist. You shouldn't be a reporter. You're being biased. You're shaping minds and people say this to me all the time where I do these reviews and like, okay, you know what? After your review, I'm going to go buy tickets. I try to encourage people in a realistic way. Again, I'm not being like, everything is great. It sounds just like the records. Everything is perfect. Things go wrong. Like the microphone at the Glastonbury Festival, like cut out. It was cutting
Mhm.
out, and
Yeah.
I'm glad. But there you would see clickbait headlines saying, Guns N' Roses making excuses for sound issues and trying to like alluding to Axl's voice, but it just
Mhm.
had to do with the microphone. All that
Yeah.
needs to be said, and you could see pictures of it. I posted it. Paul McCartney was watching Guns N' Roses set.
Yeah.
It looked like he was having a good time. I wish
Yeah,
he came
absolutely.
out and did Live and Let Die with them. That would have been freaking epic.
Yeah.
And a fan, and forgive me for not remembering your name, made this comment on Facebook that because Elton John closed the show and the festival, and let me preface this with he is an icon. He is an icon in every sense of the word, not just a musician, as a person. That also, there's a nice story in Doug's book. Two things. One thing I forgot to mention, he's like the only person, this is like an athlete comparison. Like you could be a great footballer, you could be a baseball player, basketball player, you have off nights, but overall, you are the best.
Mhm.
Axl or any of those musicians can have an off night. And you could, if you want, you could focus on that off night. That doesn't mean you're bad, you lost it. It's just one of those nights where your knuckleball isn't working or whatever. It's just, I think that's just, it's interesting that people also don't have that perspective. But he said Doug's like the only person he never heard that didn't miss a note his entire life was Russell Hitchcock from Air Supply. So that's the benchmark was Russell Hitchcock of Air Supply. And there was something else I was trying to remember. What was the last thing you said? Forgive me. He's falling asleep, so he's good, by the way. Baby Brownstone. What was the last thing you had just mentioned? Forgive me. I lost my train of thought with that.
What was it about the footballer? They were always punching down on the guy.
Oh, okay. So yeah, here's what I wanted to mention. Elton John, right?
Yeah.
So Elton, I mean, this is not a secret. He wears a wig. I mean, he's 70s. He was losing his hair. All of a sudden, he has hair. He wears a wig. He has the body of a 70-year-old. Not a shot. He just looks like, a guy who's a grandpa, a guy who's lived. I don't look at him as like he's not obese. He's just a bigger guy. He's not like what he was in the 80s. After his set, oh, and his voice is not the same. I believe it was because of cancer or like he had surgery. I mean, terrible, but he sounds great. He still
Yep.
sounds absolutely great. Again, he's an icon. He deserves all the praise. But if he was a jerk, if people looked at him like Axl, they could have torn it apart. They could have said all these things about him, about his physical appearance, that he doesn't sound the same. They could have, but they didn't.
Mhm.
They made a choice. Let's hate on Axl Rose. Elton John, again, he shouldn't, those things should not be said about Elton John. My point is they shouldn't be said about Axl either. Not at
Yeah, I
this
mean,
point of their careers. So
Elton
that
John's
was where I
done.
was trying to go with this. Because and the story in Doug's book about Elton was and what a great person he is. Doug had a brother who passed away from AIDS, and Doug needed help finding, not a cure, but treatment. And he wasn't getting any help from David Geffen. David Geffen told him to fuck himself. It was that's a whole other story. And he ended up getting connected to Elton John's manager, and Elton John called Doug on the phone. By the way, this is like, I think when he was still in the hospital during the whole contract signing issue that Slash and Duff blamed Doug for, but Doug claims he's like, I was not in the country, I was having a baby, all these things. So Elton said, I'm going to give you to like my personal guy who knows Western treatment. I know how I'm going to pay for it. I'm going to do all these things. So with Elton John's treatment, his brother lived like years longer.
Right.
So Elton
Nice.
is a fantastic person. Now,
Yeah.
people don't talk about Axl Rose. There's a picture online of visiting sick kids in the hospital. He does charitable work. Guns N' Roses does charitable work all the time. That's
Mhm.
what his sister Amy did on the Use Your Illusion tour, was that she dealt with charities that wanted to set up booths at these events. And as long as Guns N' Roses believed in the cause, yeah, set it up. So Amy Bailey did those things.
Yeah.
But nobody talks about that with Axl Rose, what a charitable guy he is. So again, that's the picking and choosing that I think is bullshit. You either
Yeah.
be a hater all the way through and that's your shtick, or be honest.
Yeah. I mean, going back to the whole the crowd leaving early, yeah, there's so many factors to this as
Yep.
well. One, it is a festival crowd. It's a mixed bag.
Yep.
Now, what Neil was saying towards the end, that's when it was happening. Well, guess what, Neil? Not everybody is camping at Glastonbury. Not everybody is off the next day. Some people have got traveling from all over the country.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure there would have been people from Scotland who was there. And there was like, right, you know what? We've only got an hour to catch that train back up the road. There's so many factors, and it's just lazy to say that people were, slowly filtering out as Guns N' Roses played. It's just the whole point here is you have to accept all of this for exactly what it is. It's someone who's getting paid to write this.
I know.
They're making a living out of it. It's always going to happen, Brando.
I know.
And it has to be met with laughter and even ridicule at points as well. And that's where the real banter begins, because Neil is just showing he just simply can't take it. Now, Guns N' Roses tweeting what they did was tongue-in-cheek. That's a bit of banter. That's what they're all about. They're past the stage of giving a fuck what a critic has got to say about them.
I'm sure Axel didn't lose one iota of sleep, because if you go to the people who were there, the fans that were there that I would see comment on these articles, like, were you at the same show I was at?
Yeah, man.
And they're not all hosting Guns N' Roses podcasts. I'm not getting paid. I don't have an agenda. This guy had an agenda. I'm just giving you my honest opinion of the shows that I go to, and I let people tell their own stories. I don't try to, have them come over to my side if they're not, if we're not lockstep in the same thought process. So with all that being said, let's hear your honest review of Glasgow.
Yeah. Well, there was one thing I was going to mention about Glastonbury.
Okay, sure.
And this was right at the very beginning of the podcast, not the show. But I thought when the technical issues started happening I thought they were censoring the lyrics to Rocket Queen. But then, in my head, I was thinking, well, they played Bad Obsession. And I think Axel was the only person in the history of the BBC to say cunt live on the BBC. So, but at the same time, where the vocals weren't coming through, you could see in Axel's face that he was belting something out. So it wasn't like, oh, Axel's voice is away. But then it picks up again. You have to be there live to really believe what you're actually seeing. So Glastonbury, for me, watching it, now I said before, the BBC, I think, done a top job with the mixing. There was just obviously certain gremlins in there. And I do think, I did hear one possible reason that they were also streaming to different other platforms, and it was too technical for me to maintain in my head whatever all this was. But the BBC's kind of explaining, well, they had other streams to sort out as well.
I thought they did a good job. I
thought so as well.
I enjoyed. I really didn't think I didn't think I was going to watch it, honestly. I'm like, I've seen Guns N' Roses, obviously, a lot of this reunion. Maybe I'll watch a couple clips and, for my own enjoyment to talk about the podcast. But I just found myself, once I clicked on it, watching the entire thing and enjoying it, and kind of, dancing with baby Brownstone in my my sister-in-law's living room. So it was a good show on the telly, I guess, as you people say.
Yes, on the telly.
And then the reviews. So it's interesting, and it does. I think it's good that these bad reviews came out, because a lot of people came out in defense, and it just showed who they are. It showed who we are as a fan base.
Yeah.
And also, people probably were not expecting absurd and hard school, and there were things that they were just not expecting to happen. So if you haven't been part of the Guns N' Roses world in the last 7 years, you're like, what is this?
Yeah, man.
Especially with absurd. So that's certainly a shock to the system. And I loved Axel's comment before. This is a love song, about absurd. So he's having a great time, smiling his ass off the entire time.
Well, that's another thing. It seems his charisma has come back. There's a stage presence about Axel now.
It's
that
got
I
to be the
felt-
shoes. It's got to be the shoes. 'Cause now
Yeah.
he went from cowboy boots to sneakers. So I
Yep.
like it.
There's more grip, more
Yep.
grip. But yeah, the Glastonbury one, I was very pleased when I was watching it, and it also gave me the impression, when you've actually been to see a live performance, you can almost think that you're there, and the reason being is you could hear the individual instruments,
Yeah.
clearly. Now, I'm comparing this to all the crappy YouTube videos that are floating around and all the really bad Facebook live streams, and you can't hear rhythm. Like, it's either Slash's guitar is way too loud. You can't make out what Axel's actually saying. It just sounds like noise. So to see Glastonbury, I knew we were onto a good gig at Glasgow,
Yeah.
because a few of us were a little bit apprehensive about it. We were just wishing that they were going to have a good performance at Glastonbury to set us up for Glasgow. We didn't want a repeat of last year after the Tottenham Stadium debacle. And then whatever transpired after
And then
that
they had to cancel
transpired.
your show.
That's right. So
Which doesn't happen now. Back in the day, a Guns N' Roses cancellation, it's a day that ends in Y, sure, but
Yeah.
not today, not today. So that I felt bad for you and all those fans. They're like, when are you going to reschedule? When are you going to reschedule? Well, they rescheduled and they came back
Yeah.
triumphantly.
They kept their word, and they gave us, I'm sure that was over a 3-hour show they played. That had to have been like 3 hours and 15 minutes that they played in Glasgow, and it was just electrifying. But
What was your
before I
day
get,
like? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
but before I get there, another thing, going on about rhythm guitar, you can't actually hear what Richard's up to from YouTube videos and things like that. And to be honest with you, I thought his rendition of the Night Train solo was pretty crap.
Okay.
But see, during Glastonbury, I could actually make out that, there was something there apart from just hearing, right? So then we get to Glasgow, and you can really hear everything. And what I was able to decipher from Glasgow was he is actually playing the original Izzy solo. It's just that he's doing quite a lot of licks at the end, putting his own flavor onto that solo. So I was pleasantly surprised about that. But online videos, you cannot make out shit. So you do not deny yourself the experience of seeing Guns N' Roses live. This was my first time seeing them, and I loved it. I loved every second of it.
Wait,
I loved
ever?
yeah.
I
Randall.
had to have known that. How do
You
I
should.
not? We had to have had that conversation. I completely
had
agree.
to
I
have.
have a daddy brain that you've never seen Guns N' Roses live ever.
Never. This was my first time.
Oh wow. Okay.
And
wow.
It was also my brother's first time as well. And on the bus over to Glasgow, he had a bit of concerns. Because he had read these reviews from Glastonbury. He decided not to watch the show because he didn't want our show to be spoiled. He wanted to be surprised about what the songs were going to be. But he was reading these reviews, and he was like, apparently this happened. And I'm like, listen, man, forget about it, because I was watching it. I don't know what that guy was watching, but honestly, get that out your head. And he loved him. He loved himself. He loved it. I mean, and it was his first time seeing GNR as well. So, but we've had a history of cancellations. We tried to see them in 2001 in Glasgow as well, and it was 5 days before the gig was to happen. It was cancelled. In 2012, they were in Scotland, but we couldn't make it at all. And then we had the whole COVID debacle. Two cancelled shows because of COVID, and then whatever happened to Axel last year, I'm not too sure. But that was cancelled. We got notification at 9 o'clock that night, the night before the gig was supposed to take place. So it was a bit of a dampener, to say the least. But
yeah,
they made up for it.
I think he was sick. He was sick, or it was he needed vocal rest because of all the sound issues.
Yeah,
from the previous show, which again is not a thing that's happening now. It's not a cancellation. It's not cancellation Axel. This isn't Use Your Illusion. It is not that era anymore. So he had to really been feeling it for that to happen.
Yeah.
And so this is a triumphant return. So can you like take us through the day, the atmosphere? I know you got some pictures and some video to kind of help us guide us along your day, seeing Guns N' Roses for the first time in Glasgow.
Yeah, it was so we hired, there was a shuttle service called the Happy Bus.
Nice.
And it was a bit raucous on the way through. And the funny thing is, on the way back, everyone was knackered. And it was so solemn, and, and when you're catching glimpses of conversations here and there, you would hear, that was some night. That was the best gig I've been to. And, I'm just sitting there thinking, yeah, I've got to say the same as well. Just that experience. There might be a bit of bias going on in me, but the anticipation of hearing these songs live that I used to fall asleep to back in the day with my headphones in, a companion along your life, and just to hear the rumble of that music going right through you. The anticipation of that was just unbearable. And see as it's happening, because there's a few times where I was taking film and I was singing along, but there was an instance in Welcome to the Jungle's chorus where I was singing along, but the crowd, the noise of the crowd, I just had to stop and just soak in the atmosphere of it all.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It was electrifying. And so I'm just trying to get it evened out in my head now, Brando. So
where were, I guess, what's the arena like? What's that you went to? Like, where were your seats? Were you standing? I guess, where did you set up to enjoy everything?
So we were standing. If I just pull up the video of us entering the park, where are we?
Was it Bella Houston? I know I'm
Bella
probably saying
Houston.
Oh, okay. I was hoping I was not saying it too New Yorky. Bella Houston Park. And am I saying Glasgow with the right tin? Right tinge?
Lose the
Glasgow?
W. Glasgow.
Glasgow.
Yeah,
Okay.
Glasgow.
Nice.
Yeah. So there was fears that the ground was going to be muddy because it was raining, but the Arctic Monkeys had just played there a couple of nights before, but it was actually pretty solid, and there was material intertwined into the surface, like a rubbery type material.
Okay.
So which is fine, because the last thing you want to be is scooting about the place.
Oh yeah.
But yeah,
who are the openers for this show?
the Pretenders.
Okay,
and
that's who I'm seeing, and I haven't seen them before.
they were already on stage as we were just walking in there.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see up here. Does my cursor show? Can you see my?
I do not see the cursor now. I can see the photos you're putting on screen of the lawn and looking up at the stage.
Yep.
Of the Pretenders on.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So that must have been just after 6 o'clock. We got there. So the Pretenders played until 7 o'clock. And then I thought, because some of the local rags had Guns N' Roses hitting the stage for 8:30, but I just couldn't see it because there's a strict 11 p.m. curfew in Scotland. So, and I was thinking maybe it's going to be 8 o'clock that they're going to come on. So as soon as the Pretenders finished their set, and by the way, they were great, and Chrissie Hynde looks absolutely tremendous for being in her 70s. I had no idea she was
A legend, total
yeah,
legend.
it was great. So yeah, the crew came on, changed the set almost immediately after Pretenders went off. So they were messing around for just over half an hour. And then the videos started coming on the screen, which was pretty cool.
And that's by Creative Works. Is that who that does that?
Creative Works London, that's right.
Okay.
It just escaped my head there. But we saw Slash's girlfriend coming out. What's her name again? Is it Megan?
Yeah,
Megan.
Megan, I guess.
We saw
Megan
her
Hodges.
coming out. That's right. Yeah. So she came out the side of the stage, and I just mentioned to my wife, I was saying, oh, they must be coming out soon because that's Slash's girlfriend coming out. And she sat down at the side of the stage, and then Beta came out,
Oh.
and she was double waving to the audience, and I said to Rachel, come on, let's just wave back at her. So we're standing there like, and then about 5 minutes after that, the band hit the stage. So that had to have been about 7:45. They hit the stage, and they didn't stop until 5 to 11.
They are solid with that. Again, this is not your father's Guns N' Roses or whatever it is,
No.
however you want to phrase it, that they are on time. Doug had told me that he would carry around a briefcase full of money because Axel's like, okay, find out what the curfew thing is, the amount of money, the fine, and I'll pay it. And that obviously would piss off the band. That added a lot of stress and anxiety to Duff. And Doug would be like, okay, you don't want to do it. If you want to go back to the Sunset Strip and pay no fines, you can do it. Or you could still make $1 million, which would be less than what, the $2 million that you would have made. You're still making money. It's costing you money, but you're still making a lot of money. But Axel didn't care at that point. And I think a lot of that, he had to be mentally ready to hit the stage every night. And to give awesome performances. It wasn't like he waited and did these half-assed performances. And it's interesting to go back to Glastonbury for a second, that the late act there was Lana Del Rey, who blamed it on her hair, that it takes too long to do. I just thought that was funny. But yeah, man, and what GNR does when they have a curfew, it's like from one song to the next. There aren't breaks. They do a great job. They're a professional organization now. They used to be the CNN band that were on TV all the time. The clusterfuck riots. That's not this anymore. Just go to have a good time. So I'm glad everything. And how was the weather? I know it could be iffy.
The weather was fine.
Okay.
It was raining to begin with, but it was pretty humid at the same time. So it was around about 18 degrees, I think my phone was saying. So when the rain did come on, it was a nice reprieve from just how hot it was.
Okay.
And by the way, 18 degrees for us is hot. So don't laugh at us.
18. I got to see what that is. So it's 18. Hold on, I got to do my conversion because again, I'm here in America. We don't use the metric system or anything like that. 18 degrees Celsius to Fahrenheit. 64. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
That's not hot. All right. Well, whatever. Anyway, that's interesting. So is there a song, because they're setlist spoilers, by the way, I have to announce that I forgot who yelled at me. It might have been Scotto back in the day, my former co-host, still current friend, about people don't want to hear setlist spoilers. I didn't think about it at that time.
Right.
But were you aware that they've added Bad Obsession and Pretty Tied Up and Down on the Farm?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
What were you looking forward to hearing? Because those specifically, I'm looking forward to hearing in August.
Well, personal favourites are Bad Obsession and Pretty Tied Up, and Down
Yeah.
on the Farm as well. I was just saying to my wife last night, I counted 16 songs out of the 30 that they played that I would rather hear the most, and it happened. It was one of those. Everything aligned perfectly for us on Tuesday. The only song that I did miss was "Don't Cry."
Okay.
But I have no complaints about the songs that they played. They played Anything Goes, and that was incredible. I think Axel introduced it as some. Do you know certain songs where it makes you all feel lovely inside, and you're in love, and you're walking through the park? Well, this ain't one of them, or something along those
It makes
lines.
you want to commit Harry Carey. Did they play "Don't Cry" in Glasgow?
They didn't.
Okay,
No.
I thought you said that's the only song that you. Oh, you mean like you would have liked to have heard? That's what you mean
Yeah.
by you missed it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then Anything Goes that they haven't played since 1988 or whatever it
Yeah.
is. I think it's great. It's great. I guess what were the highlights for you?
The highlights were Bad Obsession. Um, Second song in, and the stewards had already invaded us. And Bad Obsession was only a verse in, and they were hauling this guy out. And we were quite close to the segregated part
Okay,
from, is it the Golden Circle at the front or something like that?
sounds right. It sounds right to
So
me.
so we were just a couple of rows back from the barrier, and they were hauling this guy out. I have no idea what he had done, and he was quite a biggish lad as well. So it took about 4 of them to hoof this guy over this barrier. So that was a little bit of a distraction from the early goings on of Bad Obsession, but that was the second song in, man, and already there was a ruckus happening. It was great.
Money
Yeah,
well spent, I'm sure.
yeah. Um, Another highlight had to be Welcome to the Jungle, especially when I had to take a step back and soak in the atmosphere. And everyone was bouncing, man. It was great. Down in that must be like a VIP area down the front, this golden circle or something. I didn't see them moving around as much. It looked kind of flat down there. But we were pretty much in a jungle where we were. And I did have footage of mosh pits happening right next to me. So
Okay.
let me see if I could pull this up.
All right. On our shared screen.
You seen that okay?
Yeah, I see Axel. I see you a lot of rows back, but still pretty cool atmosphere. Not
So
everybody has their phone up, which is nice to see.
it was such a relief because again, see on the YouTube videos and you see this sea of screens. No, everyone was very much in the moment in Glasgow. But however, when Sweet Child of Mine came on, everyone had their phone up, and it was pretty hilarious to see all these mini Axels all over the place. It was all you were seeing.
And I think that's then that it bears repeating when we GNR diehard fans talk about the set list and what could be removed and all those things. The generic fans, not just in the festival setting where they just may not even like Guns N' Roses and only know the hits, but the people that are not us, that don't host a Guns N' Roses podcast, that don't make an Izzy Stradlin documentary, people that are just the common fan, they're going to see Welcome to the Jungle. They're going to see
Definitely.
Sweet Child of Mine, and those are going to get the biggest reactions all the time,
Yeah.
the time. So that's just it is what it is. But I actually enjoyed seeing that because as somebody who, I'm waiting to hear Perhaps, and I love hearing Absurd live. I'm that kind of person. I like watching everybody else freak out to Sweet Child of Mine. It kind of makes me, it replenishes my love of that song, seeing the effect that it has on people and why it's one of these all-time great songs ever written.
Yeah, it was one of those moments akin to how people can feel very spiritual, say in a church where they're singing as a congregation.
Sure.
I liken Sweet Child of Mine, my experience the other night, to something along those lines because everyone knew the lyrics. And that had to be the only song where the crowd just sang it all the way through. It was brilliant.
And that's special. I got to imagine, and I wonder how that makes Axel feel and the band feel after all these years.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
to that's why I'm not a huge fan, or I don't look at it a negative term as a negative term, nostalgia act, because you're hitting a certain nostalgia button with that song, and you're taking people back to a time, a place, and you are so lucky to have created that moment for millions of people. So
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong. I mean, I don't consider Guns N' Roses a nostalgia act because they are absurd and hard school. If you just want to bare minimum, they're not a nostalgia act, and more to come, I believe. But there's nothing
yeah,
wrong with that. The fact that you have this song that is still moving thousands upon thousands of people, millions across the world when you're
yeah,
you're doing these tours. That just speaks volumes. Uh, you accomplish something with your career, your life. I can't imagine that feeling.
yeah,
It's interesting to hear artists talk about like their biggest hits, like that they get sick of it, but look what it does to people. Like it's your biggest hit. It's
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
it moves millions of people.
When
Yeah.
when Patience came on, and by the way, Patience was just tremendous. Uh, I'm I'm really happy that they bust out the acoustic guitars, and Patience was just so beautiful. Now, when you're looking around and everyone's swaying at the end, people are locking arms with each other. There was this couple, just a couple of rows down from me, and they were just being very tender with each other, during the end of it. And then they were hugging and they were just swaying back and forward. It was beautiful to see, Brando. There were so many people completely involved in the majority of the songs. You know what I was surprised? Absurd got more of a crowd reaction than what Hard School did.
Okay.
Now, I prefer Hard School over Absurd, personal choice. But see Absurd live, it's a completely different song.
Yeah.
That bass, the bass rumbles like nothing else. It's pretty relentless. So I enjoyed Absurd live. I just don't know what it is about the studio version. I don't mind it being on. It's just not a go-to, basically. But see live. And Chinese Democracy is a great live song as well.
Hmm.
Um,
What about Street of Dreams? They played that. They brought that back. What was that
sure.
like? What was that
Well,
like? That was
I,
in the encore.
that took me by surprise. Um, it was definitely enjoyable. I would say it was possibly not to be negative, but the not the strongest song of the night, basically.
Okay.
But there was few moments where Axel was completely belting the lyrics out, and it's those moments as well that save a song
Mhm.
as well. So, but again, it doesn't subtract from a whole experience being there.
Mhm.
It was just, it came on right after the encore, which, by the way, Neil, people were moving towards the exits to beat the crowd. They were being in position. They weren't deserting the place. So yeah,
What and I've tweeted this and I want to make sure I say it again because they Wichita Lineman is still in
ah,
the set. I love their version. I hope
yes,
they release it as a single on an EP, an album, whatever. It I knew Glenn Campbell. I wasn't it was more my parents' era.
right,
And so it made me go back and just fall in love with the original. But I think his voice suits it so well.
yep,
Axel, I love how the band just they sound perfect. Honestly, they sound perfect on that song. So keep that in the set list. I have no problem. Yeah, no more covers. No. Keep that cover. I enjoy it very much.
Sorry.
Did you get any merch or the lithograph or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
We pretty much just, as we were getting there, made sure we had our spot and we didn't move. We just sort of meandered around that area. There was no risk in losing the spot where we had, because it was a pretty good spot.
Did people ask you about the shirt you were wearing?
There was a few people pointing towards me. So yeah, I was definitely representing last night, a couple of nights, Brando.
Yeah, I appreciate that. G was
full gear.
wearing the Appetite for Distortion t-shirt, which you can get on Redbubble. I have a whole Linktree thing up, so if you want to buy an AFD shirt, I appreciate it. You know, people, it's your logo. You're advertising your work,
Yeah,
as well at the same time.
yeah, man.
Oh, brilliant.
So I do have notes here. I didn't
Okay.
take them while it was going on. Let me see if I can instantly. Axel did a golf clap.
Okay.
So it was pretty early on in the set, and he must have spotted someone in the front row giving a little clap like this, and he says, I just have to comment and appreciate the use of the golf clap," and he was going like this down to whoever it was doing it. But it's just little, my wife was saying last night as well, it's not just that he's standing there and wailing away, it's all these interactions that he has.
Yeah.
And this is the guy that you've only seen in magazines and news articles back in the day, of him jumping into crowds and giving some long-winded speech about something. But when he's talking, he's just a human. He's just a human being. He's just someone who's just spent his life being creative, and he's made it thus far. And here he is at 61, still belting tunes out and running about the stage as well.
Was it that show where he almost slipped off?
Yes. So now I'm sure it was at the end of Reckless Life.
That could have been real bad.
Which was a banger, by the way. Yeah, he was going on to one of the feedback monitors.
Okay.
And he slipped, and it almost, because he was about to belt out the final lyric of it. So he just sat down, and then afterwards he was like, I saved it.
Oh yeah, that could have been a nightmare. But now he's laughing. He's just like, this is just, people should appreciate it. So that's why I think now more than ever, people don't appreciate those negative reviews. It's like, what are you doing? Why are you Debbie Downer? Why are you trying to kill our, like, we've been waiting for a reunion between these guys that was never going to happen, not in this lifetime. And here we are 7 years later, still going strong. And what I believe is that they will have at least 1 or 2 singles. Slash did say in an interview, might have been like, I don't know why this is randomly in my head, just like the Cleveland Observer or something like that, that after this leg of the tour that they're going to go back and create actual new music. And I forgot to mention this. I did talk about it last podcast about, because you saw the picture of Axl and Slash in a studio in Norway, and how that I went from getting the interview and then 24 hours later, sorry, we can't do it. And the picture was taken down off Instagram. Right. So I forgot to mention that. So either they didn't want to deal with all the DMs anymore, even though they responded positively to me, or they were told to take it down. So, and they were saying they were listening to some mixes. What could that be? Could that be, perhaps, could that be a live mix of something? We don't know, but it was a real trip to see Slash, Axl, and Axl's nips. Everyone, sorry, I had to do that a meme when everyone kept pointing out The axle was feeling a bit cold, a little bit pointy. The shirt he was wearing, is so his nipples. Like, whatever. Who gives a shit? It's so stupid. So I put it in a meme. Did you ever see the movie Basketball?
Yes.
Yeah,
I was
yes.
talking about this with my son just a couple of days ago.
It's such a
It's
great
a great
movie
film.
with Matt Parker and Trey Stone. Or did I reverse those names? The
Yeah.
guys from I know the guys from South Park. They had they had Bob Costas was in it, that famous sportscaster, and Al Michaels, also famous sportscaster. You know, you're excited. Feel these nipples. And I was like, oh, how excited are you that Slash and Axel are in studio together again? And I did that picture side by side with that photo from the photo from the film. So anyway, I mean, it should be all good stuff right now. It should be all good. What time did you get home? I know this is like a day or so after. This is 2 days after the show that we're recording this, that you need to recover.
So yeah. So our night was very rock and roll, Brando. So we left Glasgow just before midnight, and usually it's about a 40-minute journey to get back home from Glasgow. Now, the motorway was closed for repair works, completely shut off, so the bus had to go through the beaten track, these narrow roads, and it's just completely backed up by traffic that would have went the motorway. So we were getting home slowly but surely. About an hour and 20 minutes later, we arrived about 15 minutes away from our drop-off point, and the bus broke down.
Oh my God.
They had to pull into a lay-by, and the bus just would not start at all. It was lucky we actually made it to a lay-by, and we're in the middle of nowhere. So it's not like we could walk into town and nothing would be open anyway. So people were panicking, phoning taxis, and then all of a sudden, all these taxis just started pouring in, scooping people up. And the bus driver's scratching his head, and he's saying, "I'll be here till the morning for a pickup." And so we actually waited for the replacement bus coming out, and there wasn't very many of us that did wait. So we left Glasgow just before midnight, and we got back home just after 4 a.m.
Oh, nightmare.
And
Nightmare.
my neck was killing me. I had no idea how much I was moving during the concert, but my neck was killing me. My back, my knee was swelled up for some reason. And my throat was absolutely killing me. And we didn't have any water with us either. And it was like just scratchy. So yeah, apologies that I couldn't make it on yesterday, but I was
fine.
completely rubbered. It was I was no good yesterday. My throat's holding out right now, thanks to this cough and throat spray, which numbs it, because yesterday it was just coughing constantly. And not a satisfying cough either. It wasn't clearing anything. So I gave my throat a jolly good spray with this before talking with you, Brando.
And if they want to be a sponsor of the AFD show, just reach out.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's brilliant. Anything, because I want you to still rest your throat. And I don't know, baby Brownstone is still sleeping, but he can wake up like a screaming banshee at any moment. Any other thoughts that you want to get out there before we wrap this up, this review episode?
Well, I'll just give you another video now.
All right.
So there was this mosh pit forming next to us, and there was people fleeing the scene, but there was also people being drawn to the scene. And there was these two wee guys. They must have been about 15, 16 years old, and they were just barging their way to the front as much as possible. And they went in front of my wife, and they were just rocking out in front of us. And then they saw the mosh pit happening. And these guys, Brando, they were just skinny little teenagers. They just bullied their way through to the mosh pit. And that was the last I saw them. They
they're,
were just getting barged about everywhere. It
they're
was
still
absolutely
there.
great.
They're still there twitching on the ground. Oh man, it just sounds like everyone had an amazing time, and,
It
and
was a
survived it.
brilliant
It sounds
time.
like, and you survived buses and uh, no, that's awesome. And those fans deserve it, man. I have a lot of listeners in Scotland and that part of the world who are just extremely bummed out. They see fans all over the rest of the world enjoying Guns N' Roses, and there's the one show that gets canceled, and it took time. So I'm glad it just seems to be a really triumphant, and the reviews I'm reading about that show, much more favorable. I don't,
Yeah,
well, basically because those two people that, Mark and Neil were, I don't think they reviewed it, so that's why it was favorable.
yeah, yeah. As I say, the Scotsman article that I just read before jumping on was pretty favourable. Um,
Hey, I'm ready. I'm ready. It's not, it's the end of July. Oh, excuse me, end of June. August. I think I'm going to Metallica first. Metallica and Pantera.
nice.
And then yeah, Guns N' Roses. Baby Brownstone's still too young to go. I saw this news article about this woman who took her 10-month-old to a metal festival, and there were a lot of online backlash about it, but good for her that she's standing up for it. Like the baby is headphones on. I mean, as long as it's not like they're up against the stage, you're not crowd surfing an infant. Like there's ways to go about it. 2 months, 3 months, I think that is still too young. But as soon as he can, hopefully Guns N' Roses comes around again next year, because I want to take him. I want to take him to see GNR.
It will happen, my friend. And
Right on. Yeah,
GNR
absolutely.
still have a few things up their sleeve to come.
I think so. I
I'm
absolutely think so.
I'm of the opinion their final hurrah, they've still got the golden nugget, the full reunion, and I know they can do it. I believe.
Yeah, I mean, as long as Izzy and Steven are still alive, which they are. I know there are rumors of Izzy doing something with the Juju Hounds. There's rumors of that, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
there were
It's
pictures of the bandmates in the same studio, but on different accounts. Like you're more of an Izzy guy, like more, right? Am I remembering that correctly? This was a few weeks ago.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so people were trying to connect the dots of perhaps Izzy is doing something, which would be fantastic. And Steven's playing the festival circuit, getting great reviews there.
Yep.
It would be nice, man. It would be. It's no slight to, I'm a fan of Richard, I'm a fan of Frank, but you've never seen Guns N' Roses prior to 2 days ago. So you've
That's
obviously
right.
not seen the classic lineup. I haven't either. The first time I saw Axl and Slash was this reunion. I always thought I had to have the reunion in my head when I saw Velvet Revolver and the Chinese Democracy Tour. I'm like, I just have to have I've seen them both on stage, so if I think really hard, I can pretend it's the same show. But
Yeah,
the fact that they're still doing it, and I'm going to buy tickets each and every time. I'm not going to do what I did last year, which go into 3 shows, but a
right.
little bit of a tour. I don't think he can handle it. Although very
Yeah,
proud of him. We drove to and from Chicago with him, and he's
nice.
relatively okay. Look at
He's
this.
a good man.
He's a good man. His little face. Oh man.
Blissfully unaware.
What's that?
Blissfully unaware.
Blissfully unaware. Isn't that the way to go through life? You got it
Sometimes.
good. You got it good right now, buddy. You got it good.
Just
And
wait till you're 18.
I know, right? So that does it for Appetite for Distortion this episode. So if you haven't yet, check out Iwas documentaries on YouTube. Watch that Izzy Stradlin documentary, the only Izzy documentary worth seeing. I don't know if there's even another one in existence, but it's the only one worth seeing. And just thank you again for your friendship, for the logo, for the
Not a
awesome intro
problem.
videos that we have on our YouTube page. If you go to YouTube, it's not just like you can watch these whole episodes. I'm doing a lot with YouTube Shorts, those 1 minute interviews, 1 minute clips from an interview.
Yeah.
And I know you're big into statistics and analytics of YouTube and all that. So I mean, I interviewed Alice Cooper 2019,
Yep.
And I've had the episode up there since then, and snippets, clips, like 2-minute clips of him talking about the garden, whatever, talking about Hollywood vampires in a different clip. So I just made a 1-minute short. I'm not nearly as good as you, of course, but trying my best at video editing, doing a decent job with it.
Mhm.
And just a few weeks ago, it was just like, I don't know, maybe I had like a 10,000 views. Good. Like it's just,
Nice.
I've noticed with YouTube Shorts, more people notice the page than an actual video.
Right.
It's really interesting. I think it's like their version of TikTok where people are just scrolling and just see
Sure.
stuff like easier. So that was maybe a few weeks ago, 10,000.
Brilliant.
This morning, over 90,000.
Nice.
90,000 have seen this. But to put things in perspective, this is great. So like how much money you really make as a content creator. So again, this is a 1-minute clip. It's gotten me an extra 144 subscribers, which is
Brilliant.
one of the best reasons to do it.
Yeah.
So 90,000 views. You want to take a guess on how much money that's made me?
I couldn't possibly say. I don't know.
$8.35.
$8.
So I think
I was
he
going
gets
to
a
say
diaper out of
15.
that. One
Well,
diaper.
good. Yep. Every little helps, Brando. Keep doing it.
My wife is so supportive. I'm like, I say it facetiously, this video made me $2. She's like, every little bit helps. So supportive when I'm
True
trying to put.
story.
No, it is true. So go to our YouTube page, our YouTube pages. You get to see some great content, and the conversation continues in between the broadcasts. So follow on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I still have that Stephen Piercy interview to put out there. And I think George Lynch is going to come back on the podcast as well.
Nice.
A friend of the show who's also been a guest of the show, Big Chris Flores, who's a producer who produced, he's worked with Slash. I think he worked with Slash and Fergie. He found in his archives a lost Chester Bennington Slash song that became something else. I think it became Dr. Alibi, or it became something else when the album was finished. And he's working on the new Lynch Mob album. And he reached out. He's like, you want to do an interview with us? I'm like, yeah. As long as you also talk Guns N' Roses, let's talk some on Lynch Mob and Dokken and whatever else there is to talk about. So yeah, be on the lookout for that. And as I always say, if there's a guest that you want to see in the podcast, suggestions are always welcome. You can be a co-host. I know there are more people like you, G, waiting to do their fan reviews. So more fan reviews are coming up.
Bring it on
as well. So I'm excited to talk to Guns N' Roses fans around the world again this year. It's one of my favorite things to do. So that does it for this episode of Appetite for Distortion. When will you see the next one? In the words of Axl Rose concerning Chinese democracy, I don't know if soon is the word, but you'll see it.